as usual, I will invite jurors to introduce themselves. Then I will ask each teams to introduce your teams. Okay? So I'm Professor Jiazida from National Taiwan Normal University. Please.
Okay, my name is Lin Zifen from National Taiwan University.
Dear professor, students, good morning everyone. My name is Zhangling Lu. I'm from Department of Physics at National Taiwan Normal University. Thank you.
Only lady. Only lady. Please.
Oh, hello. I'm from Academia Sinica, and my name is Yapi Xie. Thank you.
Thank you. So you are from Institute of Physics? Institute of Physics? No?
Atomic molecular.
Atomic and molecular science.
Okay, yeah, I remember. Okay. Now I'd like to have the team Waku to the captain. Please introduce your teammates, please.
Hello everyone, we are Team Waku, and I'm Captain Hao Hongjun, and she's Xu Changxin, Yuan Yingting, Wang Yuhou.
Okay, thank you. What means Waku?
It means excited.
Excited.
It's excited in Japanese.
Okay. All right, thank you. Okay, now I'd like to have the team animators introduce your teammate, please.
Hello everyone, we are Team Animators. I'm Zhou Xuan, this is Wu Xiaoqi, Chen Siyi, Ye Jiqi, Zhao Bian.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the third one is Team Nairo. Am I pronounced right? Yeah, please introduce your teammates.
From high school, and I'm Captain Chen Yifai. This is Wang Yihao. This is Hu Junhao, Yoifen, and Wang Yihao. Thank you, everyone.
Okay. So Nairo is also a Japanese name. Okay, I see. Okay. Now I'd like to invite the team opponent, to challenge the class for this fight.
We want to challenge the problem number 8, human pendulum.
Problem number 8. Okay. I forgot to tell you the available problems is on the board. Problem number 8.
Reject.
So the problem reject. What's the next one?
We want to challenge the problem number 12, let's carry down.
Problem number 12. Please make a decision right away. Please. Accepted. Okay, the problem number 12 is accepted. So you have 5 minutes to prepare. And in the meantime, please write down the name for the presenters. explanation.
Hello, judges and visitors. I am the reporter. I'm James from Team 103. And today I'm going to report the problem number 12, rice kettlebells. So this is the problem statement. Take a vessel and pour some granular material into it, for example, rice. So it looks deep, for example, a spoon into it, and at a certain depth of the immersion, you can lift the vessel and contents by holding the spoon. Explain this phenomenon and explore the relevant parameters of the system. So our main focus will be that find the relevant parameters that affect this phenomenon. So this is the outline I'm going to report. First, I will talk about the observation that we made an experiment, and then we'll talk about the theory. And then we're going to talk about our experimental setup and the variables that we did in the experiment. And then there will be a data analysis, and I will talk about the conclusion and also the further discussion that we can talk about. So this is the observation. You can watch the video first. Okay, so in this video, there is a scale on the bottom, and so we add a specific amount of grains into the containers, and so we can watch the least amount of rice that we can add into the container to let the spoon can lift up the container. And this is the theory. In our prediction, we think that if we put only the same size of the particles into a container, it might not be so stabilized if we can lift up the container. So our thoughts are that if we can put different sizes of materials into the containers, for example, like the big particles and also the small particles, the structure of the container and the particles inside will be more stabilized for us to lift up the container. So this is our experiment setup. The particles that we choose to use is the smaller ones and the bigger ones. And the smaller ones are the rice grains, and the bigger ones are the coffee beans. And the containers that we use are the plastic bottles, and we prepared 2 plastic bottles. One of them is shorter and one of them is longer, and the length are 10 centimeters and 15 centimeters. And also we use an arrow spoon to test the lifting. And we use a signal generator to vibrate the container so we can make sure that the structure of the particles the density is enough. And this is the experiment steps. So we set the spoon and the bottle onto the signal generator, and then pour the coffee beans or rice onto the bottle in units of this. And then we put the bottle on the scale first, and then we put the bottle on the signal generator to vibrate the particles evenly to increase the density. And then at last we'll pull the spoon out, and then we can find the least gram that the spoon can be lifted, and then decrease or increase in order to check the parameters and the least amount of particles that we have to add in the container to lift the container up. So these are the variables in our experiment. So, okay, these are our hypotheses that think the parameters that might affect the phenomenon. So when we lift up the container, we can see that there are frictions between the particles and the particles. And there are also frictions between the particles and the containers outside. And there are also friction between the spoon that we use and the particles. So we think that because of the gravity, so the downforce will pull the friction. So the gravity will fight against the friction. So what we have to do is we have to let the amount of friction get greater to let it go over the gravity, so we can pull up the stick. And the variables that will affect this phenomenon is the particle density, particle size, and also the contact area of the particles and the stick. So these are the data analysis. These are the least amount of particles that we have to add into it to lift up the spoon. So the depth that we put the spoon in is the same. It's the control variables, which is the container length 10 centimeters and 15 centimeters. So we can find out that in plastic bottle 1, which is the shorter one, we add 230 grams of the rice grains, then we can lift up the spoon. And we add 100 grams of coffee beans, so we can lift up the container. And for the longer plastic bottle, we need to add more rice grains to lift up the bottle, and also add more coffee beans to lift up the container. And these are the conclusions in our experiment. So the first one, the larger the particle sizes are, the higher the height are required. And because if the particles is bigger, that means that there will be more area that there are no particles in it. So the friction that can lift up the spoon will be smaller. That's why we need more contact area with the spoon and the particles, so that we need a higher height. And then the smaller between the spoon and the ground is, the smaller the height required. And third, the larger the radius is, the higher the height is required.
The first question I want to ask.
So then I'll talk about the discussion that we can improve our experiment later in our future experiments. So first we can try, for example, because we only use a spoon to detect it. Actually, we have tried to use a stick to lift the spoon, but however, we tried, it always failed because no matter how much of the particles we add into the container, we fail to lift up the container with a stick. That's why we choose to use a spoon. And our thought is that the spoon has a larger contact area with the container, so that's why the friction will become larger, so we can lift up the container. And get back to the data analysis. And also that we can see that the radius of the two bottles are actually the same. But why we have to add more particles for the longer bottle is that because the longer bottle has a greater mass. So we have to get larger friction to let the friction of it fight over the gravity because of the mass. So that's why we have to increase the least amount to lift up the container. And this is the end of my presentation.
Okay, thank you. Now I'd like to have opponent discuss some questions.
So I want to ask first question is, do you fix the second time?
No, because no.
No, okay, thank you. And another question I want to ask, do you measure the rice density?
No, we only calculate the mass.
Okay, and so what do you control the speed when you let the vessel up?
Sorry?
Do you control the speed when you let the vessel up?
No, but we lift it up gently, like slowly, because we didn't want to like have an acceleration when we pull the thing up.
And so do you use the different split?
No.
Okay. Do you think the friction here is important?
Yes.
And how you control the rice density, and it's in every time is the same.
Yes, because we have vibrate for enough time, so as long as the rice can fall down for like fully fall down, it is the same density as we add in the same mass of the rice.
Okay, thank you. So do you think the contact area of the spoon will be the same?
For the same spoon, then yes, but if the height of the particles is different.
Okay, so do you consider the spoon is the imaginary object here? Did you container and not the spoon.
Sorry, I don't know.
The regular, just it's very different shape.
Yes, spoon has a larger container at the bottom.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now, please be seated. Now we have time for preparation for our opponent. Please. Please.
Hello everyone, I'm the opponent Yazishi in Team Amateur for number 12 rice kettlebells. And here is our problem statement and our focus will on the certain depth. And for the main focus, for number 1, we will study the first analyze for different systems. And number 2, we will explain how does the depth, static friction coefficient, and the radius of the stick affect maximum static friction force. And here, overview the report. We can see in her report when the stick dipped into the rice and we can lift the vessel and contents by holding stick. And for the zero, they use the uniquely severe packing. And experiment, they change the particle and change the length of the container of the vessel. And also they change the angle of immersion. And for the conclusion, they use the coffee beams and they think it's more easy to lift the vessel up than the rice. And advantage and suggestions for her. We think she explained the theory in detail and also have the good experiment. And for the suggestions, because we think she needs to put the more variable of the experiment here and need to compare the experiment data with different variable maybe she can put the arrow bar here. And also, I think she needs to analyze the first with picture for their spring. And also, the words on the PowerPoint need to be bigger too. And there are points to be discussed. For number 1, we will discuss for the packing here. And next one, we will discuss for the use the different particle and the different bottle and different angles and accuracy. Because they didn't have their chart and arrow bar here, so maybe we'll have some arrow here. And thank you for your attention, and I want to discuss for the reporter.
Okay, please proceed.
Okay, so for number 1, I want to ask, because you just said the first analyze for the spring, you just talked about to me, so I want you to draw on the blackboard, please. Thank you.
So if this is the container,
Yes.
and we have the particles, and this is the spoon that we use. There will be, when you lift up the spoon, this will be our lifting force. There will be gravity, and when you lift up the spoon, there will be friction by the particles and the edge of the container.
Yeah.
And for the inside, there will be the friction for the particles and the spoon.
Okay, and because the spoon, you just asked in a short question, and you say, and you answer me, the spoon is not the irregular, just not the, yes, it's not the, it's a irregular shape here. So maybe the normal force per here will not be the same for every contact surface.
Yes, I agree with the point,
Yes.
but I think that the most important thing is the contact area, but not the shape of the. Because if as long as the contact area is the same, that means that if the particle sizes are the same, the contact area of the particles and the spoon will be the same. So the friction will not change so much.
Okay, but another question is, because I can see in your report, your vessel is not like this. Your vessel is like this, just not the shape like this. So here maybe some difference, because when the vessel is not the irregular, the friction force into the vessel will not the same thing over this thing.
Yes, I agree with you that maybe if we add the same amount of particles inside, the friction coefficient will be larger because of the smaller radius of the container, and here will be more. Yes.
Okay, and can you please change to the 0?
Yes.
And you use the packing here, but do you think the rice is not the packing, is not the arrangement? Because the rice have different friction here, and also it's not the random arrangement here. So maybe the packing, because the packing is for the same shape here.
Yes.
So the rice will not be the same. And how do you fit the 0 to your experiment?
Okay, so I think that this picture is not actually like specific correct in my experiment, but what I want to mention about this is that different sizes of particles will make the areas of the space area smaller, because of the smaller sizes can put into the larger sizes area. That's what I want to mention about.
So you think it is an audio model here in your experiment is not the real mode in your experiment, right?
Yes, because in our prediction, we think that mixing different sizes of particles will make the container more stabilized to lift up.
Okay, so can you change to another page?
Which one?
Another page. Just.
Like the page number? Which one?
Yes, okay. Because it's for the 6.
6.
control the time when you hitting the vessel, right?
Yes.
So, but if you don't control the time, it maybe will influence the rise density here.
Like we have done several times of the experiment, and every time we use the same material, we are controlling the vibrate time to be the same. But when we change the sizes of the particle, we actually changes the vibrate time, because we think that different sizes of particles, they need different time and different vibration to let it like come down for totally. So if it's the same size of the particles, we actually vibrate it at the same time. But when we change the sizes of the particles, we also change the yes.
But if you don't control the time when you shaking the vessel, here will have the timer go here.
Okay, so for the smaller particles, we actually vibrate for a longer time, because like if you have the smaller particles, the area between the particles will also be smaller. So they need more time to like become so flat. So we actually control this as a variable that when we use the same material. And when we use a larger one, it actually has a larger space. So, but the particles is larger, so it cannot fall down for it cannot fall down here for like
So
self-specific.
another question is, because you just tell me you didn't measure the density here, so you think the burden of the rise will at the same every time?
I think there will be a little difference, but the size is the same, so the contact area will not change so much. But it must be some
No,
deviation.
the size of the rise will not be the same. Every rise will have the different shape, so maybe it will have the different friction. So when you have the different friction, it's not the same here. Do you agree?
I agree with you partially, but I think that actually the size is not changing so much that like the coffee beans and the rice and the rice and the rice. Actually, this is more significant of the size difference, right? Do you agree?
Different size here.
The different sizes between the rice and the coffee bean
Yes.
is more significant.
Yes.
So actually we in our experiment we consider the rice to be in the same size, because we just want the contact area, and also the comparison between these two are actually really big.
Okay. And another question is, because you just answered me with your question, and you asked me, and you answer me, you hit the vessel, right?
What do we hit? Vibrate?
Yes.
Yes.
Yet you like this, right? You use the spoon, and when you have to measure the depth, and you will hit the rice to the solid, like the solid, right?
No, we put the spoon in initially, and then we add. And then we vibrate.
So you don't hit it?
I didn't say I hit it.
Okay. So I want to ask, you measure the friction, you measure the maximum friction first here, or only the friction first?
No, we only measure the mass of the least amount of particles that we have.
But you just say,
We didn't quantify the friction.
yeah. But you think the friction is important here, right?
Yes.
Okay. So do you think the friction first need to be the maximum friction?
To lift up the
Yes. When you lift up this. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And another question is, because you just say you don't control the speed here.
Yes.
And maybe when you don't control the speed here, when you lift up, it will move the density here.
Yes. Actually, I agree with you
Yes.
in this one, but in our experiment we actually we try to control, but we are using my hands, and this may be my fault. But yes, there must be some deviation in the experiment.
So I think maybe you can use the Pascal. You can use the Pascal machine here, and you can make every time the first and the speed when you lift up is the same.
Yes, I agree with you. And I can say that in our experiment, we actually tried to lift the vessel up as low as possible, so we can try to not consider the acceleration of our lifting, but only consider the gravity fighting against the friction.
Okay. Can you go through the experiment data? And I want to ask, because you said the friction force is important in the experiment, right?
Yes.
But and you just answer me every time the rise friction will be the different step, but not the variable friction. But do you think maybe the friction force will influence the experience? So maybe I think you need to draw the arrow bar on the data here. Do you agree with me?
Yes, I agree. And also I want to mention that for the circle and the square, I forgot to mention that there are also, we also did a variable for the different shape of the container.
Okay,
Yes.
so you use the same height here, right?
Yes.
In the rise and the square.
For different shape, yes, same height, and we also did different kinds.
Okay, but the volume will have the same here because if the circle and the square will not the difference volume inside it, right?
Actually, in our experiment, that shows that there is a difference because because our particles are kind of a round shape, right? So when you add it into a round shape, and for the square one, it will actually be an angle here. So when you add something more here, the contact area here will be like smaller. So when you have a square shape here, you can see that if you get at the same height, you need to add more amounts of mass to lift up because the contact area will be smaller if there is an angle.
I mean because you have the square and the circle vessel, right?
Yes.
And the volume of it will be different because the circle for this circle and this and the square, the shape and curve, the long and it will not the same.
Also, we control the area of them the same, but not the length. We control the area too.
Area.
Yes.
This is the square and this
Okay,
is
thank you very much. Time's up.
So from the discussion, we discussed the shape of container, but reporter said it will not affect the experiment result. But we think the friction and normal force, even the pressure, will affect all systems. And we discussed about the spoon didn't have a regular contact surface. And the reporter thinks the contact area is more important than the surface. And the reporter also said the density and shaking times are not important in the experiment. But we think these two factors will affect the data, so our data maybe have some error here. And thank you for my attention.
Okay, thank you very much. Now I'd like to have a review, please, to raise your questions.
Okay, so just for the shape of the container, so you think you won't have an influence?
You mean the shape?
The shape of the container.
It will have influence.
And have you said it?
Yes, I just said that if the angle is
What do
bigger,
you think
the
of it?
contact area will be smaller.
I think it will also be different because the square and because the circle and the square will not the same.
So I do think is there anything else that you can lift up the right?
Yes.
You just say it's because of friction and gravity. Is there any other reason?
I believe that there must be, but I cannot think of right now.
What do you think?
I think it has the gravity and the friction first here, right?
Just as two?
Yes.
What about arc effect?
Sorry?
Arc effect. Arc effect.
I don't actually know.
Okay. And you mentioned the weight. Is that content about also include the spoon weight?
No,
Okay.
because the spoon is what we lift up, so we didn't put it. So we didn't measure the weight.
Okay, and Why don't try to use chopstick?
We tried to use the stick, but we failed. And our guess is that the contact area is smaller, so we think that if we use a bigger radius, we can
If you use a stick, will it work? For this banana mount?
I think maybe it can make this. I think yes.
Yes. Okay. And how?
Because the stick of the contact area will have the same, right? So when you lift up, the thermal force will be the same.
Okay. What do you think about her?
I disagree with her because the contact area is different. Just like I mentioned, the spoon and the chopstick, they have the different shapes, so the contact area must be different. But if we use a stick, the radius is bigger than the
Can you
contact
also
area.
consider the material of the spoon?
No. But I think this will affect because there will be different friction between different materials.
Okay. You agree with her? Okay. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Then it's time for separation of the material. Okay, please, review. Please.
Okay, honorable precision and reviewer and reporter. I'm going to review on the 12 rod kettlebells, and here's the problem statement. The reporter says take a vessel and pour some granular material into it, for example, like rice. If you dip, for example, a spoon into it, then at a certain depth of immersion, you can lift the vessel and contents by holding the spoon. And they're going to explain the phenomenon and explore relevant parameters of the system. And here's the performance of the reporter, their theory. They have a simple understanding at how the phenomenon works. And for experiment, they have clear explanation set up. And for the conclusion, it does not have connection between the theory and the experiment. For the pros, they have simple understanding of the question, and they have clear explanation of their setup. However, they did not try to use other things to lift up their rice, like other materials or other shapes of the food. And they did not take the density in consideration. I think they have they did not discuss enough variables. And for the performance of the opponent, they point out the problem about the contact area and the density. And they also have a simple understanding about the phenomenon. However, they do not have much discussion about how the friction can be calculated. Okay, and here's the discussion topic. the opponent first asks the shape of the spoon is irregular, and the reporter says it will not influence so much to the results. And in the reviewer's point, as the shape gets different, the friction and the area connected to the rice would also be different. So, and the friction each spot might also have an impact to the results of this experiment. And for the discussion second, and the time of shaking is not controlled. And the reporter said they haven't done the experiment many times. And I think the shaking time would have an impact. But at this part, they should just discuss more about how to control the density of the rice so that it will have a more precise results of this experiment. And third, they discussed about the size of the rice. The reporter said they consider the volume of the rice is a set. In the reviewer's point, perhaps they should discuss more about the relation between the friction and the surface area of both the rice and the spoon. And then the opponent said the shape of the container. The reporter says it will have an influence, but also not so much. And in my view, is that the reporter should have more variable to try to see if the friction and the gravity, since I just discussed these two forces, will have more influence to the results of this experiment. And here's our point mix. In my point, since rice might also have an arc effect, and I have no more discussion about how to calculate a certain number of the coefficient of the friction. And this is the end of my review on 12 press kettlebells. Thank you for listening.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, please. Now I'd like to invite questions from. I'm sorry, all the reporters.
So both the opponent and the reviewer said that I think density and the area and the shape of the container doesn't matter, but actually I said yes. I said that the contact area will be different if the angle is different. And also that the material of the spoon is actually can be a variable because for the same contact area, if we use like metal and wooden, the friction will be different. Like the wooden one maybe have a larger friction, so we can add like smaller amounts of the gravity and we can still. And also that the thermal force for the different part of the spoon isn't the same as one of our considerations, but that the reviewer mentioned about that I didn't use other things to lift up, but actually I said that yes, I have tried to use a chopstick to lift up, but we guessed that actually the contact area is too small. So if we have other times, we can use like larger radius, but like a shape and a stick, so we can increase the contact area of the materials and to lift up it easier. Also, that we should quantify the friction, and my thought is that we can use a scale to measure the mass at first, and when we lift it up to measure the friction of the container that we lift up. And also that I can make more experiments to find out the differences between a stick or a spoon because the shape of them is different. And also that I didn't consider the rice will be the same structure as the picture because the rice is not like a fully round shape. So these might be the things that I can do in my future experiments. And this is the end.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, now I'd like to invite questions from jurors, please. Yes?
So you were talking about the density of the grains that will affect the experiment. So what if you put the stick inside or spoon inside first and then fill the rice? In comparison to what you do to poke it in, what would affect your result? Or maybe you report reverse.
So what we did is actually just put the spoon in first and then we add the grains into it. That's what we did. But we think that if we put in the thing later, we have to vibrate it again to make it the same as if we put the thing in first and then we add the particles in. So we have to vibrate it for a longer time.
So what if you don't vibrate it, and just in case you just put it in, and what's the difference between them?
We think that the movement of we poking it in might push the materials to like spread outside and will influence the contact area of the spoon and the material.
How about that?
I think put it in later will also have a little influence to the density. But if you put it first, then some of the volume for the rice will be replaced by the spoon. So I think it should also take into consideration.
How about you?
Because when you make the rice have the depth here, and I think when you put it into when you put the spoon and stick into it, it will change the density of the rice and also the friction force.
Oh, okay.
Any more? Any more questions? Yeah, please.
So I have a question for a reporter, opponent, and the reviewer. One important parameter here is the shape of the grain. The shape of grain. So the reporter used the rice and the coffee bean. So if we use the irregular shape granular, so what do you expect for this phenomenon? So starting from reviewer first. Irregular shape grain.
Which means that they have the different area that will touch the spoon. So I think at this point we should try to use other more specific, perhaps a specific device or equipment to check out what the shape is really like, and to see how they connect to each other, so we can have a more precise prediction to the friction.
Okay, how about the opponent? What do you think about if we use an irregular shape grain?
I think it will change the density, contact area, and the normal force of the rice or anything, the material, and also the pressure here.
It will be more hard to predict the contact area since the shape is different. We don't know if it's like this or like this. And also that the friction will be harder to predict because of the shape is different.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, any more? I'd like to raise a very simple question. I think most of you has done the experiments, and they mentioned the shape of the spoon. And you mentioned the shape of the spoon will affect the result. Why and how? Can you respond?
Now I can think of two possibilities.
Yes.
The first one is the contact area
Contact area.
yeah, and the second one is the curve of the spoon.
Curve.
Yes.
Curve of the spoon. How about you? You?
The curve of the spoon is also about it's just similar to the shape of the spoon, and they have to. I think they should figure out what type of spoon, since there are many types of spoons. They should take it into consideration.
So you consider the material of the spoon.
No, and use.
So I think the comes up. I think I got your idea. One sentence, just one sentence.
I think it's the contact areas to influence this.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So ready? Okay. Initial score for the reporter. Six, 5, 5, 5, 6. The score for the opponent. 6, 6, 6, 6, and 5. And the score for the reviewer, please. 6, 6, 5, 6, 6. Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, we can take a 10 minutes break. Here, please.
We would like to challenge Siren.
Siren.
Problem number 3.
Problem number 3.
We accept it.
Oh, okay. Then we go to the preparation time for the recorder. Okay, please write down the names.
Please.
Hello everyone, I'm the reporter Ye Ziqi in team emitter for number 3 server. And for our public statement, if you direct an airflow onto a rotating disk with a hose, a sound may be heard. Explain this phenomenon and investigate how the sound characteristics depend on the relevant parameters. And this is our main focus. First is how host quantity affects frequency. And for number 2 is if the size of the host affects frequency. And number 3 is if the rotational speed affects frequency. So here is our problem. Here is explain video. And you can see we fixed the airflow for steady airflow and the rotating disk is kept the speed, so we can hear the sound from it. And we use the audacity to have the audio signal and have the frequency analysis. And here is our fundamental sound. We analyze it. And here is our observation. So when we try to do the experiment, we find when the speed for the rotating disk is too slow, then we can't hear the clear frequency. So you can have many color on the disk, and when you think, and you can see when the color is in a too slow situation, you can see the clear color here. So it means the speed is too slow. Next is the origin of the sound. So first, when the airflow is go through the hole, then it will have the high peak from waveform like the blue paper here. And next, when it hit the disk, it will have the spring circle like the waveform here. Then the high peak means it will have the low pressure, and for the spring circle here, it means it will have the low pressure and high peak. So here is the plus. We find it is very like our waveform. So when you so the definition of the plus is it have the periodicity, and it will go to the higher value and down to the lower value and back to the baseline value here. So for the high peak, it's when you go through the holes, and for the here, it means you hit the disk. And what here, the period is longer to here, because the area of the hit the disk is bigger than you go through the holes. So to origin of the sound, you can see the picture on this. It's just like when the rotating disk is caught the airflow and it is rotating, so we can have the waveform like this when it is rotating. So for the normal situation, it is have the speed, so we can hear the sound. We can hear the high frequency of the sound, and it is the 1 second here. So we can hear this depend on the continuous, regular, and periodic pressure variation caused by the holes on the disk. And next is the frequency calculation. So the frequency we also know it depends on how many holes the airflow go through per second. So when the airflow go through the holes, we can have the formula for it. And the Fp is the pitch for the frequency, and the N is for the number of the holes. And for the Fr here is the rotational speed of the disk. So when the number of the holes is increased, then you can see the picture. The area of the airflow will go through the holes will also increase. So it will have the positive proportional relationship to the number of the holes. And in another situation, when the rotational speed is increased, then the airflow will also have it will also go through the holes will increase. So it also has the positive proportional relationship to the rotational speed here. Next is the turbulence. So for the red circle, it has many small harmonic here. Then we think it is a noise. So for a noise, we think for number 1, the major is the airflow when it hits the disc. And for number 2, it's because the airflow and the motor sound from the environment. And next, you can see here. We zoom in the picture for the airflow when it hits the disc. And here you have the turbulence here. So the turbulence is very unstable airflow. And next is the Reynolds number. And the Reynolds number is the node unit. And its inertial force to divide it to the viscous force here. And this is her formula. So when the Reynolds number is bigger than 4,000, then we will have the unstable turbulent flow here. And here is our experiment setup. So for the side view, we use the same disc and the motor. And the motor is to control the rotational disc. And we use the DC power supply. We change the AC to the DC, then it will have the steady rotating speed. And this is the disc with the hose and the air gun. We use the shaving to fix the air gun, so it will have the steady force, and also it will have the same place when the airflow is go through the hose. And we use the microphone to record the sounds and connect to the computer with the audacity and analyze it to the frequency. And in our experiment, we changed for number 1, we changed the number of the holes here. And you can see the manipulated variable here, we changed the 6 numbers of the holes. And this is our control variable. And here you can see, here is the fundamental sounds, and the x-axis is the harmonic. And the y-axis is the frequency here. So when the hose is increased, you can see the line will, the frequency will also increase too. And here is our data. For x-axis is the number of the holes, and the y-axis is the frequency. And for the red point here is the theoretical value. And for the black line and the black point here is the experimental value and the trend line here. So you can see when it is the rotational speed is under the 57 RPS. So when the number of the holes is increased, the frequency will also increase too. So they will have the positive proportional relationship here for the formula. And you can see it's very fixed the envelope, so the black line will have some in the red point. And then next, we change the rotational speed here. And this is our manipulated variable. And we have the 5 speed here. So you can also see here the black point is the experiment video, and this is its trend line. So when the rotational speed is increased, also the frequency will also increase too. And it will also have the positive proportional relationship here. And because here the frequency it is smaller than this -7 to 225 here. So we think the error is very small. And next is we fit the experimental value and the theoretical value for this formula. So you can see it's very fit to the envelope here. Then we change the hole size for another variable. And here we have the free hole size. And here is our control variable here. So when the hose is increased, we can see the line of it is very close to. So we think when the hole size is bigger, the frequency will not have something influence about it. And for another variable, we change for the airflow speed. And here we have the first speed here. And here is you can see the flows. So we think when the airflow speed is increased, the frequency will have some influence to the frequency too. And here is our conclusion. So injecting the airflow into the disc with the hose rotated with a fixed speed, a certain sound we can hear. And the origin of the certain sound comes from the periodic figure origin caused by the holes on the disc. And the frequency can be calculated by this formula. And the number of the holes and the rotational speed are positively proportional to the frequency. And the hole size and the airflow speed do not influence the frequency in our experiment. And thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you. Now I'd like to invite opponent to raise your questions, to ask questions.
Okay, thank you for your talk. My first question please go to page 9. I want to know what's the unit of this vertical axis.
Here unit is the dB here. Decibel here, and the x-axis is the frequency here. Yes.
So in this picture, you use the same velocity of the air flow and also the velocity of the rotation is same. And why these three ways is different?
This is fundamental sound frequency, and here is the harmonic, and here is also the harmonic here too. Yes.
This code page 15.
Here.
Now you know how many times you took the report, because I see the error bar.
The frequency don't have the error bar.
Okay, time's up.
Thank you.
So, preparation for the opponent, please. Preparation, skip it. Or teach. seconds. 30 seconds. Okay, please. We go to
Okay, now I'm going to outside the number 3 problem series. And now first I'm going to talk about the structure of the solving problem. First, let's analyze the relevance and the phenomenon parameters to analyze this problem step. And second, they use experiment to prove this phenomenon. And then the conclusion, the experiment data to let us can normal their experiments. Yes. And this is problem step. If you drag an airflow on a rotation disk with a hose, a sun may appear. Explain this phenomenon and investigate how the sun currently depends on the relevant parameters. And the cause of curve is that the theoretic model via literature and simple understandable qualitative extension of experience. And second, that a problem that use of input. And the concept of the report is the explanation of the setup not clear and off, and incomplete investigation how the air really works. And the cost of the experiment is not the temperature and report useful setup, and sufficient investigation of the phenomenon. And second is not the computation of different variables. And the count is not the parameters is not mentioned, and later we will talk about it. And the lengths between the holes are not experimentally variable. And the cost of the theory is not the relevant of modeling of the airflow and explain the phenomenon of the sun clearly. And the count is not the efficient model of the how the lambda may relate to the result. And now, and I will discuss with some point with the reporter later. And first we will discuss the lambda of the sun. Later we will discuss the radius of the holes, how affect the experiment result, and second we will discuss how the airflow velocity or how big the airflow will influence the experiment result. And next we will discuss the length between the holes will affect the experiment result on that. Okay, now I would like to show you.
Okay, please. Folder, yes.
Okay, and the time we have a coordinate chemistry, you means the frequency down by arrow bar, so you mean you get the same frequency in every time of the experiment.
No, because of you change the rotational speed here. So in a different speed, we can hear different frequency here.
So every time is the same frequency.
No, it may be some different, but we use, you can see on the next page. We use the formula to have the theoretical value here, and you can see the number. You can see the number is very close here. So we think, so we can have the frequency here.
Okay,
And here is our experiment data. Here is experiment frequency, and here is the zero frequency here. Yes.
and second, I want to discuss you said the radius will not affect your experiment result, right? The radius of the hole will not.
Yes. Here.
Okay, but I think if the radius of the hole is increased, that also means the hole and hole distance will decrease. So there may have means the two hole is mean,
Yes,
and
but
will it affect your experiment result?
I think it will not, because you can see the data here, and also for the formula, when the frequency is equal to the number of the holes for when it is rotating state, right? So for this formula, I think the size won't influence the frequency here.
So do you think the distance of the hole will affect your result?
Maybe it will have some difference in our waveform, because I explained the period from the high peak and the lower peak here, right? And so when the area of the holes is bigger, and the distance here will be closer, so the period of the waveform will be short too.
Okay. And in your report, you said if the velocity of this too slow, we can hear the sound voice, right?
Yes.
And why?
Because we can hear the sound to 20 to 2000 frequency, and when the rotational speed is too slow, then maybe we will hear some noise very clear when it is hit the disc. So we can hear the clear frequency, but we can hear the frequency here.
And page 6. Okay, I want to know how do you get this wave? How do you get this wave?
Here, we get this wave, and this waveform is in our experiment, and so it will have the constant, and it will have the periodicity, like the characteristic for the pulse.
So you do the experiment and then get this wave, right?
Just this picture, we use the audacity to analyze, and it will have the waveform like this.
Okay.
Yes.
And go from over. And here are some
here is just the scattering diagram here. We just want to show you can use this method because I think when we try this experiment and we find when the road is too slow, then we can hear the clear frequency. So here's the way I think we can to make sure the rotational speed. Yes.
So you need to define the rotation speed, right?
No. You can use this and to test the rotational speed is too slow or it is okay or it is good. Yes.
And in your experiment, do you think the shape of the ball will affect the experiment result?
I think it won't in measure to influence the frequency because you can see the whole different shape will have the different holes, will have the different size. Just like the whole size in our experiment, and it will very close to the frequency in any shape. But I don't do this experiment, so this is I would guess here.
Please go to the question. Here it looks like some wave moving. Can you explain this wave?
So you can hear here is very sensitive, and here has the high pressure, and here has the low pressure, and I just want to explain it just that when the rotation is rotating, and when the airflow cuts the hose and hit the disc, then it will just like this. Yes, you can see. It is rotating and it's just like this.
So what's the symbol of each platform?
Single. You can see when it is the high peak here, and it just like this. And when it's the period of this, it can just like this. And this is the waveform when it is rotating.
Now you make a hole on the CD.
Yes.
And how do you get a hole?
I use the drill to make the holes.
And have you changed the velocity of the rainfall? Windfall. Airflow.
Yes, I change it in our parameters. So we change the pressure for the air pressure machine, and we change it because when the air pressure is different, then it will when it has the same tone to the airflow, and when the pressure is different, then it will when the airflow goes through the tone, then it will have the different speed. So we change the air pressure here to change the airflow speed here.
And why you use this formula in your experiment?
We use it to have the theoretical produce, and I want to test it is when is my fundamental frequency is the right here, because it is very close to the zero.
And next question, I know you haven't did it in experiment, but I'm still curious that if you check the degree of the airflow, will it affect your experiment?
I think because I didn't do this experiment, so I guess it will have some influence because you can see in my experiment setup, we just fix it in the motor, so it will have when it hits the airflow to a different angle, maybe it will have some push it. So when you push it, it will have the torque here. So maybe it will have the different frequency here.
May I use Pro?
Please.
Your experiment device, you use this, right?
Yes.
Yes. And you break all on it. And if the will the stick of will the if the piece is thick, will it affect your suit because the receiver and the airport need to use more time to through it.
Because I use the same type of disc every time. So the thick of it is the 0.1 centimeters. Yes. So I think if you ask me if I'll change the thick of the disc, will it change the frequency here, right?
So you think the thickness will affect the frequency, right?
No, I think it won't. Because for the phone I guess it needs to.
Okay. Time's up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Please.
Okay, and in 10 minutes, I discuss with the response. First, we discuss will the size of the hole will affect the experiment result or not, and the color things will work. But I think it will, because if the size of the hole increase, it means that each goal, the distance will decrease. So it will affect the frequency. And then we discuss the speed of the airport and because it won't affect the experiment. Okay. And we also discuss why if the pressure is too slow will affect.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, I'd like to have a question from the reviewers.
What do you think is the relationship between the first frequency and the second frequency?
I think it is to compose to we can hear the sound for the first frequency, for the fundamental frequency, and plus to the dynamic, and then we can human here can hear the sound.
Thank you. How about you? What is the relationship between first frequency, second frequency, and third frequency?
It means when the air flows through the first hole and through a
No. Thank you. What do you think is the suitable size and suitable distance between two holes?
I think maybe it went too close, and maybe not too close.
Okay, thank you. How about you?
And I think they will have a suitable size, but I think it's experimentable that we can research.
Thank you. You said that the size of the hole won't affect frequency, but how about the temperature?
Temperature.
Yes.
But I didn't do this in my experiment.
Okay, thank you. And what do you think?
I think it will.
Okay. Do you think the size of the airflow will affect
Size of
size of the airflow?
two will do. I think it will because when it is more bigger than the host, when it is bigger than the host, it will close.
So what is the suitable size? Is it bigger than the host or smaller or at the same? Thank you.
Maybe it's a parameter we can change here.
Okay, thank you. What do you think?
I agree with the report.
Okay. Do you think the airflow goes through the multiple holes at the same time? Multiple holes. Two holes. Will the airflow go through the two holes at the same time?
When the rotational speed is very quick, I think it will because the area of the disk will increase the hole.
So do you think you will have erratic irregular? Do you think it will have incorrect graph? Incorrect graph.
Because we changed the rotational speed, so
Okay, thank you. Where is the setting of the microphone?
we set at the express setup here,
At the front or at the back of the disc?
at the front of the disc.
Do you think it's better to be at the front or at the back?
Maybe we can try to at the back here in the future.
Okay, thank you. And what do you think is it better to be at the front or at the back of the disc?
I think it's a parameter that we can do it in this display.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Time for preparation and review. Ready?
Hello, judges and competitors. I'm the reviewer from Team Water. And first, I would like to thank for the report from the reporter and the question from the opponent and also the attention from the jury. And first, this is a public statement where I won't repeat again. And the text, and these are our text, and I won't repeat again too. And first, I would like to talk about the pros and cons from the reporter. For the theory, they have clearly defined the cost, and for the experiment, they considered many variables. And from the structure, they show graphs on the PPT of the result of the experiment. Also, it is related to the theory. The result is related to the theory. But the cons is that they didn't quantify the rotating speed, and they used observing color area on the disk to define. And also, they define the calculation formula more. They should define the calculation formula more clearly. Also, they didn't consider the outer disturbance sound in a static state. Also, the holes are not evenly spread on the disk. That means the distance between holes are different. Also, there is no error bars on the graph. And for the opponents, the pro is that they mentioned there are no error bars on the graph the reporter showed. And also, they mentioned more variables that may be considered in the experiment. Also, they mentioned the unclear definition of the observation rotational velocity. But the con is that they focus too much on the error bar, can also discuss about what the reporter did not. Also, they focus too much on the experimental setup for the device. For example, how to get a hole on the disk, and also for the time management. And this is a discussion analysis. The point raised by the opponent is that how many times did you do the experiment? And there are no error bars. The reporters response is that they answer unclearly. And our opinion is that there should be an error bar since the outer disturbance sound is not considered. The error should be significant. So I think a better choice is that we should record the steady situation and then to delete it. And also, the point raised by the opponent is that will the distance between holes or a hole size affect the result and how? And the reporter response is that it may affect the from and say the whole size and rotation velocity may affect the frequency. And we disagree with the reporter because it can affect the amplitude of the sound. And we ask that what is the suitable distance? The opponent's answer is that these are the answer. And we think the suitable distance is that the distance between two holes should be bigger than 2 radius. Because for example, there are 2 holes, and this is the radius. For distance, we think it should be bigger than 2 radius because we need to avoid the situation is that when the airflow go through 2 holes at the same time, we can decrease this situation. And we also ask that what is the relationship between first and third frequency? And the opponent didn't answer, and the reporter's answer is that it's the capability of hearing the sound. And we think that the relationship between each frequency is the multiple times. And we also ask that what does the suitable size of the hole to for the airflow? And the reporter's answer is it is their future experiment. And we think that the suitable size need to be at the same size with the hole because if the airflow is too small for this second, maybe it will go through this hole, but the next second maybe it will go through the same hole. But when the size of the floor is too big, maybe it will go through the 2 holes at the same time. So we think that the suitable size it should be the same with the holes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Now, concluding remark, reporter.
So thank you for opponent and reviewer. We discussed about when we change the radius of the holes and the distance of the holes will also change, but I think it will not affect to the result. And the opponent asked why do we have error bar because the frequency doesn't have the error bar. And why we call it the CD? Because we can try to fill the space here. And for reviewer, we change the velocity for the charge change the motor and not to define with the color here. And we use the drill to make the hole so we can make sure the hole size is the same every time and effective. And opponents think the thickness of the disc will affect the frequency, but we think it will not affect the frequency because the formula didn't machine it. And I didn't explain clearly about the sound produced. So when the airflow go through the disc, then it will have the high pressure, then when it hit the disc, so when it hit the disc, it will have the low pressure. So when the pressure is changed, then we can hear the sound. And it is also the characteristic for the sound how to produce. And thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you. Now I'd like to invite questions from jurors. Yes, please. Appreciate.
So it was quite surprising to see that I think the reporter have a lot of data, but you didn't analyze the value as amplitude as what they suggested. And so, what do you think that the size of the shape affect the how do you think the size of the shape of the hole will affect the volume? Did you see that from your data?
I think when the shape is small, then the volume of the frequency will lower, and when the shape is bigger, the amplitude, the volume will be bigger too. Yes.
So do you have what do you think? What if this is like a slit? Comparing the same area, if it's a slit, and compare it to just one hole, and what do you think? What would affect the? How would it affect the sound? Do you want to say something?
I think the pressure and the air and the amount of the air will affect the air volume because that the amplitude will be higher, so the sound will be higher. The volume of the sound will be bigger too. I think the pressure is higher, and also the amount of the air that goes through the hole is bigger. That means the hole is the size of the hole is bigger, so that the more amount of air will go through it. And for these two are the reasons the volume will be bigger.
I think if we change the size of the hole, the area of the hole will also change. So I think we can. It's experiment very volatile. We can research how the size of the hole can and the airflow will affect. I mean, we can compare if the airflow can. I mean the area of the hole will bigger or smaller or is same as the area of the airflow can get.
Okay, thank you. You all mentioned about the errors and I think opponent challenge important. In their experiment, they consider size, spin speed, airflow, and quantity of holes. How these parameters affect your error? And in this graph, do you have any comments on the uncertainty of your measurements? I mean, I need to ask three of you about the errors you mentioned in this report, in her report. I think you have replied many times. Can you reply again about the uncertainties of your measurements?
Because we only can have the frequency, and it is a value here, so it can change. And so it can have the error here.
All right. How about opponent? Do you have any comments on the uncertainty of the measurement?
You mean the error bar?
Error bar means the uncertainty of the measurement.
So can you repeat your question?
I just want to ask, you asked her about the errors, error bars. The error bar means the uncertainty of the measurements, right?
Yes.
So in their measurements, they consider quantity of holes, the stream speed, the size, and the airflow. How do they affect their uncertainty? They should have, or they shouldn't have.
I think there would be the errors of the experiment, and I think it's good to change the experiments that set up to decrease the.
So can you tell from their data? Can you tell from their data?
I think there's no, I don't see many algorithm experiments in this way. I think there should have.
Okay, thank you very much. Time's up. I'm sorry. Yeah, please be seated. So you ready? Okay. Please show the score for the reporter. 6, 6, 6, 6, and 7. The score for the opponent 5, 6, 5, 5, 6. Then the score for the reviewer 7, 7, 7, 7, and 7. Okay. Thank you. We will stop here and classics. Yeah, 6 classics.
We would like to challenge problem number 13, almost equal.
Problem number 13.
Mario.
And accepted.
Okay, the problem accepted.
Thank you.
Okay, now it's a preparation time. Please write on the name of the reviewer. we are ready. Okay, please deliver your report.
Okay, and this is now, and today we're going to present Ponyo's tube. And here's their problem statement. The basic glass tube with a sealed top is filled with water, mounted vertically. The bottom end of the tube is immersed in a beaker of water, and a short segment of the tube is heated. When investigate and explain the periodic motion of the water and any variable bubble observed. And here's a video that shows what is Ponyo's fault. And so the problem statement, it just shows us the engine of Ponyo's tube. And so we're going to find out how the boat moves. So we're going to figure out the period of water and observe how different parameters influence the bubble's movement. Okay, and here's my phenomenon investigation. And as you can see, as the energy is continuously provided, bubble trends are formed, and the velocity of a bubble trend coincide with that of a parent bubble. And if you check if you look longer, you can see that water has a specific period if given energy continuously. Okay, I'll first show a phenomenon investigation. And I'll give you a diagram of the experiment setup, and then I'll show the period of water, and then I'll tell you the bubble observed during the experiment. And here's the schematic diagram of the experiment setup. I use a nickel chrome wire and the power supplier to provide the energy. And there is a waterproof temperature probe at the part which is as high as the beaker's water surface. And we get into a breadboard and a computer to analyze the data. And here, I'll just show the period of water. And here's part 1. As you can see, in this part, no bubbles are observed, and the temperature just keep rising. And here's the second part. You can see here the bubbles are observed, and a larger amount of gas rises to the top. And lastly, the pressure caused by the heat and gas makes the water drop to the level, which is at the height of the beaker, as you can see here. Okay. And the third part is the air in the tube convects, causing the surface of the water in the tube to oscillate. Here. And since air conducts here pretty poorly, so the air on the upper side will condense. As water from condensation reaches the water level, the temperature will get lower quickly, and so the water will be in the tube again. So, and the following experiment is mainly discussing about the relation between the temperature of water and the formula to calculate the energy of water is discussed below. And I choose to use this formula to calculate the energy needed for the period of water. And here I just first use this previous formula to calculate of how much is provided. Then I will multiply time passed to calculate how much energy is needed. And as I put the sensor at this part, and this is temperature difference. And as you can see, this is the first part, just as I showed before. And then you will have a little shoulder, and you will get to the highest peak. This is the second part, which means that it gets to the hottest water gets to the lowest part of the tube, so the temperature will be highest at this part. And then as it convects and oscillates at this part, and you will just get down, and there is a sharp drop, which means that the condensation water that gets to the water level, then you will rise to the highest part. And this is our data. And this is the second peak, and the third peak, and the fourth peak. And why you didn't see such obvious shoulders on the third and the fourth peak? Because at the time the tube has been broken, but I still put it here to show you that water is actually periodic. And the time to generate the highest peak is 2009 seconds. And we can use the previous formula to calculate that the minimum number is 496.66 joules. and the maximum is 16,555.47 joules. Then we can get the average, which is about 30,159.64 joules. And then I shorten the length of the tube to see if it will have an impact. And here we also see the first part and the second part, the third part of the water period. And here is this time passed. Okay, so I also use the previous formula to calculate the energy needed, and we get the answer which is about 7,083.02 joules needed. Okay, and this is another part. I put the sensor at a different part of the water, which is where it oscillates, the third part. And I find out that its temperature. Well, this is the time that this is the temperature that when it oscillates. So we can say that at this part, its temperature is higher than much more than that in the beaker. And we also calculate the energy needed to create the height to the largest peak. And we get the number is 8,496.677 joules. Okay, then I'll discuss about the bubbles observed during the experiment. I define this as Taylor bubble, meaning that it takes on a characteristically shaped basis at a velocity, depends on the tube diameter and the physical properties of the liquid. And the requirement of conservation of liquid volume provides a plausible explanation for this contradictory feature, which means that the space vacated below the ascending bubble must be replenished by a descending liquid film. And it is confined between the seal and liquid plug, and the temperature difference between the evaporator and condenser is established, which means if there is a temperature difference, then the bubble will come. And the liquid meniscus will start oscillating. What is that oscillating? I'll talk about it now. The growth of bubble in the vapor causes compression of neighboring bubbles, and the direction of plug motion can be inverted. That's called an oscillation. It also shows the mechanism of oscillation sustained by bubble generation. Here's my data. I put the sensor at different scales from the water label. And although most of them are not so obvious, but you can see that if you take a look at which is 4 centimeter scales from the water surface and 1.5 centimeters above the water level, then you can see an obvious temperature difference between them. So according to this, we can just agree with the previous theory that there is a temperature difference, then we can get a bubble. And then I discussed how many times does it need to calculate the first bubble, the first Taylor bubble. And to calculate energy to rest bubble, we also use a formula to discuss this. And the minimum number is 284.78 joules. And the maximum is about 9,492.56 joules. And we can get the average of this, which is roughly about 4,888.67 joules. And I also calculate how much bubble are generated in 10 seconds. And this is the average number of 3 data. I've done the experiment for 3 times, and this is the average number of the bubbles. Okay, and again, I also use the previous formula to calculate the energy needed. And according to this chart, we can observe that the whole bubble number in 300 seconds are 181.2 seconds, and the energy is roughly about. Then we can calculate the minimum is about 760.58 joules, and the maximum is 25,552 joules. And we can get the average. We can get the average of these two numbers, which is about 30,159 joules. And I divide how much bubble numbers are in 3,300 seconds. Then we can get how many joules are required for each bubble. And then we can get a number which is 72.62 joules. And this is my conclusion. First one is that a bubble is generated due to the temperature difference between the evaporator and the condenser. And the energy needed to generate the first bubble is about 4,888.67 joules. And the third one is the energy needed to have the water get out of the tube. It's about, which means that it gets to the highest peak of the chart. It's about 30,159.64 joules. And then, except for the first bubble, the energy needed to generate each bubble is about 72.62 joules. The last one is as the tube gets shorter, the period of water gets longer. And this is the end of my report. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Now I'd like to have the opponent to ask questions.
I have some questions about the experiment. Are you familiar with the soy papa flow? As you mentioned, the Thomas flow. Are you familiar with it?
Oh yeah, he just
Then are you familiar with the theory of it?
theory.
Of the structure and the theory behind the toy papa flow?
You just hit the tube and the water will get out just as I showed. So the boat would get forward.
And have you ever observation the movement of water inside the toy papa flow?
No, I think this is not the
Okay. Have you ever seen a constructor called pulsating heat tube?
frustrating tube.
Yes.
Can you explain it more clearly?
It's fine. Do you think evaporation is the important theory of this phenomenon?
Evaporation is critical.
Do you think the heat conduction is well controlled in your experiment? Do you know the stabilization of the bubble could happen in the tube?
I just want to say that it just tells us to observe the bubble, and the main focus is the period of the water.
If we think the stabilization of bubble can happen in the tube, can you predict the movement of the stabilization bubble in the tube?
Again, I just want to say the bubble is just a process. The main focus, what the problem really wants us to observe is the period of water, not the bubble. The bubble is just something before the period happens.
Okay, now it's time for the preparation time of the opponent. please.
Hello, judges and fellow competitors, and thanks for the report of reporter. I'm the opponent from Team Waku Waku, and this is the problem 13.C2. The problem statement is shown. The critical point we need to find is the possible factor behind bubble generation or movement, and how does the size of tube affect bubbles generation or stability. Let's report the pros and cons of the reporter. The pros of them is that they have an experiment shown in different status with introduction, which is clearly observed. And they shown many charts and detect different data from different perspectives. But the cons of them is that they didn't define the formula in the theory more clearly. And they didn't explain the reason to get average energy with maximum and minimum energy needed, and what does the average value mean. And too much focusing on the correct calculation in the presentation is one of their cons too. And the final discussion I would like to go is about these 3 points. The first is about the evaporation of the water, and the second is about the surface tension of the water, and the third is the simple harmonic motion we might observe in the phenomenon.
So you are going to discuss.
Yes.
Okay. Please go ahead.
You have observed the period of the water in your experiment, right? Yeah. But have you ever calculated the possible phenomenon that we can observe?
Can you define your question more clear?
Okay. In the toy top boat, actually a plate here, right? And the fire is set up here, and tubes connecting out of the boat, and get the turbulence out of here and push the boat move forward, right?
Yes.
So water is inside.
Yes.
Then why do you think the boat will move forward?
Oh, it's just I show the period of water. The water will get out of the tube if you give this energy continuously. So
So you think the water will go out of the tube
yeah,
and continuously,
periodic. Yeah.
So the water evaporated and expanded, then the water comes out.
It needs time.
It needs time.
Yeah, it needs some time.
Okay.
And according to my experimental device, I've shown you that how many seconds it takes.
Can the theory be shown?
How much time is needed?
Yes. How is this connect to the theory of water's movement?
Oh, no, this is just a formula to calculate.
So you did not calculate water's movement.
Calculate water's movement.
Yes. Water's periodically movement, it should be calculated, right?
Okay. So water's movement
Yes.
to be calculated.
Yes.
And can you explain how?
Okay. The first thing and the most thing you've done your experience about is the water's evaporation, right?
Yes.
And can the evaporation be calculated? The least value of energy we needed to evaporate the water and thus form a bubble in the tube. And then why? Did you form your formula with experimental statistics, or you have a theory that you've done experiment?
According to this, and I have put sensors at actual put sensors.
So you do not have a theory.
Did not have a theory. No.
Okay. Well, according to ideal gas equation, PV equals nRT, we do have something to calculate. And we can think the bubble shape in the tube to be a completely round circle. Okay. Then the velocity of it should be calculated like this. Right. Then we assume the pressure equals 1 atm, and the ratio of the tube can be changed according to our experiment, right? So we assume it to be 1 millimeter right now. And we have L. L is a
You're just talking about the bubble,
yeah.
not the period of water.
Yes.
What caused the? I want to clarify that. What caused the boat to move forward is mainly by the period, not by the bubble, in my opinion.
Right, but the movement of the water is pushed by the bubbles that form because of the heat we provide, right? The movement of water is because of the bubble produced in the tube.
Slightly moved.
So you think if there is no bubble, any bubble that never formed in the tube, the water still have its motion, right?
It would have bubble since they are different.
So the bubble will form. Then we have to calculate how it forms, right? Okay. Then we have the energy needed for evaporation equals to this. And after some calculation, we can predict the time that evaporation has happened, right? This time can be calculated by formulas. Yes. So you cannot calculate it before your experiment, and thus no theory has been taken. Okay. Alright, let's move from this to another discussion point. That if a bubble is formed in our tube, alright, the gas is behind it, below here, and the water is water. Okay, can you understand my graph?
We're still talking about bubbles.
No, I'm now talking about the surface tension theory. That you never observe the phenomenon that bubbles appear and not disappear in your tube, right?
Appear and disappear. Yeah, I agree with you.
No, appear but not disappear. It's stabilized in the tube.
Instead of in the tube, of course it would, and you can see this one. And this is why it will get out of the water.
No, where's your stabilized bubble? Oh, okay, but the part of your problem is that your tube is too short, that the upper part of all of your water has all been evaporated, so we cannot observe a bubble in the middle of your tube. And that is against our problem statement. So if this part of our tube is being heated, so the bubble should form around here. And the upper part should be water, and the lesser part should be water. And that is against your experiment setup. because all the bottled water has been evaporated, right?
So the
So the
problem
problem here,
tell us it should be like this.
yes,
It just says any bubbles observed. So this is perhaps this is your bubbles observed, and this is my bubbles observed.
okay. But then, if the upper part of your tube has not enough dense to form any lactic water, then we can move to another discussion part. It's about the simple harmonic motion of the lactic part of our water. That if there is some gas around here, and experimental setup is like this, right? And we have this and define as H0, and this is the water lactic in the tube. Okay. And at the bottom is a pressure, and this is a pressure. And the mass we can define is about this. Is the mass of the water pillar, right? And if the water pillar is stable, and which means it has no force equals 0, and it should be calculated as right? Yes. Okay. But if the water is disturbed, which means it's not stable, since in the process we generate bubble, it might be pushed, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So it should be look like this. Right. So we can get.
So can you tell me what are you calculating? You calculate the
I
force.
am proving that the water pillar is going to perform a simple harmonic motion. As you said, you are not predicting it.
Okay.
And we can apply the two formulas before and get the idea that we can get the result that it shows it does is a simple harmonic motion.
Okay.
So the movement, as you said, water pillar is a simple harmonic motion, and you did not predict it, and whether you did experiment or not, you did not have this theory, right?
I still don't quite understand what you mean.
I mean, the movement of water can be predicted.
Okay.
And do you agree with that? Yes, thank you.
Okay, I think the time is up. Now for review, please.
In our discussion,
Sorry, sir, for the opponent to summarize, please.
in our discussion, we have an agreement on the problem statement that the water pillar's movement can be predicted and has a formula and theory behind it to support. But the reporter did not have any experiment or theory that they suspected on this problem statement.
Okay, that's your summarize.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So, please, the viewer, please.
And when we hit the tube, the liquid and the gas and the tube will expand, right?
Yes.
And will that affect the experiment?
For the experience.
I mean,
It will cause it's part of the period. So yes.
Okay, and which is expand faster? The liquid or the gas or the tube?
The tube will be first, and the liquid will be the third, and then the gas will expand.
Okay, and how do you think?
I think the expansion of the tube can be ignored because it's too small.
Okay, and how does the numbers of the turns of the coil? How does the number of the turns of the coil affect the result?
According to P equals IV, that our heating process provided that the length of your coil is actually
So the number of the turns, it will let the power.
become greater, right?
Okay, and how do you think?
Repeat your question again.
How does the number of the turns of the coil affect the result? Numbers of the turns.
It's the area that is heated.
Okay, and do you think this phenomenon is related to the simple harmonic motion?
Yes.
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 And do you know when it becomes what temperature it will start to produce the bubble?
Yes.
What do you know? What temperature?
I've shown you in the previous presentation.
Okay.
It is 71.
Oh, and have you measured the temperature of the middle and the side? Is like the bubble from place you measure the temperature or not?
Where the bubbles are first observed, and I put the sensor here. Can you explain your question more clearly?
Which points you measure the temperature?
I've shown you in the
So it's just
each by each data, and just at which is as high as the decreased water surface, because the
Well,
whole
I
water
think
continuously here.
you measure the water temperature or the bubble here. That.
The bubbles are not here, and then if I put it where the bubbles are first formed, the temperature will rise faster.
Okay.
Okay, I think that time's up. Please, preparation time for review. Okay, please proceed.
Hello everyone. everyone, my name is Usam Chi from Teen Amateur, and the topic of my review today is problem number 13, Cornelius Heat Tube. And here is the problem statement, and is then the periodic motion of the water and the vapor bubbles, and we focus on the process of the bubble rise up and how the parameter affect the experiment result. An overview of the reporter, the observed when it hit the tube, it will form a bubble. And there is a parallel bubbles, and the experiment they change the depth of the tube. Okay, and they calculate the bubbles of production at every time and change the temperature. And the pros is explain the phenomenon clearly and explain the experiment setup clearly and good time management. And the council didn't explain formula clearly and no error bar and units. And there's data of the experiment. And need to put some picture to explain the. Okay, and the summary, the opponent discussed the evaporation and the surface tension of water and the simple harmonic motion in this motion. But the opponent explained well his formula to the reporter. And the process asked nice question to a report, and the counsel don't let the report understand what he say, and only focus on the formula analysis. And the opponent asked, can you predict the movement of the bubbles? And the reporter said it's not the main focus. Our main focus is period of the water and not bubble. And our own opinion is the period of the water and the bubbles are important. So we think the reporter needs to calculate the period of the bubble. And the opponent asked, why do you think the bubble moved forward? And the reporter said, the water will evaporate, and our own opinion is when the temperature increases, the water will evaporate. So we agree with the reporter, but we think the pressure will affect the bubble, and when the pressure of the water increases, the amount of bubbles will increase. And when we heat the tube, the liquid, the gas, and the tube will expand, and we will not affect the experiments, and which is expand faster. And the reporter's opinion is, yes, the tube it will expand faster, and the opponent thinks that is not very, it will not have a big effect to this result, this experiment result, and I think the gas it will expand faster. And how does the number of terms of the coils affect the result? And the result said, and the opponent said, it will affect the power, it will become bigger. And the reporters agree with the opponent. And our own opinion is when the number of the terms increase, the temperature it will increase fast. So the production of the bubble it will also increase. And thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you very much. Now it's concluding remark from the reporter, please.
Thank you for the wonderful review suggestions. And first, the discussion between me and the opponent is the motion of the water can improve so that we can predict the water movement. And yes, by saying that temperature is the main effect of this experiment. And in the future, I think I can do more experiments about the radius of the tube and the length of the tube. However, that is something the opponent didn't mention. So, just as the opponent said, perhaps I should do more experiment and more theory to figure out the bubble movement. Lastly, I think we can, during this discussion, we can have more discussion instead of we just layer value formula. So, sadly, I think this discussion for the last 10 minutes is a bit meaningless. This is the end of my report. Thank you for everyone.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Now I'd like to have two of you take the stage. I'd like to invite some questions from jurors. Okay, I go first. Opponent write down those formulas, they put an equal sign, and you told us that's a stable condition or equilibrium condition. But what's the equal sign means? For example, F net.
It means that if the bubble was there before the movement starts, just like if we.
So I'm just asking what equal means. You put right hand side equal to the left hand side. What does equal means? It means stable or means equilibrium.
Oh, that should be my. I should write it as a definition.
Summation. What was? I just ask, if you write down the formula,
Yes.
you imply the system is stable or equilibrium or the other situation.
The above one means if the system is stable.
Stable. Okay.
The below one means that if the system was disturbed at the first.
So in this formula, you are talking about the stable condition.
Yes.
Okay. Do you agree? Do you have any comments on this?
Yes, I agree with it.
Okay, how about you?
Mostly, not all.
Mostly, not all. So which part you don't agree?
I don't still quite understand why we write down those formula in the last 10 minutes and would not, instead of not this have more discussion.
Okay. Questions? Please. Any questions?
So
Let's
what
go.
if the
I have a basic question to three teams. Does the periodic motion of water change when you heat up the tube before and after vapor bubble appear? Okay, does the periodic motion of water change when you heat up the tube before and after vapor bubble appear? So starting from opponent.
I think no. One of the factors is because that the tube is also condensing while we heating up it. And the other factor behind this is because according to our theory that the movement of the water is mostly based on the mass of the water.
Okay. And the reviewer?
I think when it before the heat, and it will increase the temperature, and maybe it's not. Maybe it's
It's okay, so that's the reporter answer before and after vapor bubble appears. Okay, before and
And
after.
there's a shoulder, and that's when bubbles are observed. So
Oh.
yeah.
So reviewer have more.
when the bubble appears, it will the volume it will become bigger and rise up, and it will become more and more. The gas it will become more and more, and it will full of the tube. And when it full of the tube, the water it will recover the tube, and it is the period.
Thank you.
Okay, one more question.
I have a question for the opponent. Because in our reporter's report, it doesn't show anything about the bubble's oscillation or something like the periodic motion. Do you know why? Or maybe what is the main reason? How come they did not discover that part?
But I think the main reason that why the oscillating of water or bubble has not observed in many of the experiment is because of the ratio of the tube was too big, and that.
I mean the size.
The size of the tube was too big, and so according to the theory that we had not present the surface tension, that if the tube size was too big, that the water droplet will form from the upper part of the water and it drops and makes the bubble disappear. So we cannot observe any of the further movement of the experiment.
Okay.
Any more? Okay, please proceed. Thank you. So we already showed the score for the reporter. 5, 6, 6, 6, and 6. The score for the opponent, 6, 6, 6, 7, and 6. Then the score for the reviewer, please. 6, 6, 7, 7, and 6. Okay. Thank you very much. Now it's end of the morning session.